CrowdStrike causes a massive IT and services outage. CrowdStrike stopped booting correctly. Windows would say, okay, well, you told me that I couldn't boot unless you were running, and you're not running, so blue screen of death it is.
Did you have any direct effects or indirect effects from it, or that you know of?
And we went to the DMV to do the registration, and they turned us away because all of their systems were down. I'm glad to know that your car doesn't run Windows. You know, I think that CrowdStrike has got to look at their processes and maybe reevaluate a lot of what they're doing. Hello, how the tech are you? My name is HK Perrin, and I'm a software engineer, which comes into play this week because my one story this week is CrowdStrike causes a massive IT and services outage. On Friday, CrowdStrike shipped an update to its Falcon sensor software, and immediately blue screens of death started happening on Windows systems all over the world. You'd get these like big towers that were for like the images of like in a mall or something, and there would just be a blue screen of death running down the tower. It's some of it was funny, some of it not so much, because the blue screens of death took out everything from 911 call centers to a few banks around the world to Starbucks mobile ordering. One important thing to note is that this was not Microsoft's fault, and Microsoft can't do anything to fix it. However, several fixes were determined. They include rebooting it up to 15 times. This may give the system a chance to get the fixed version of the software. Restoring from a backup before July 18th at 4:09 UTC, which is just after midnight on Friday Eastern time. And deleting the drivers from safe mode, which is the current preferred fix. That means deleting the Windows/System32/drivers/CrowdStrike/C000 blah 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 291*.sys. Delete that file or files. And users do not have permission to delete the drivers. So you would have to be an administrator, and you also have to do this in safe mode, which means you need physical access to the machine. And that's why it overwhelmed IT staff on Friday and over the weekend. A lot of people were scrambling to fix these machines because you had to go physically to the machine to administer the fix and then reboot it while you're there. It's also worth noting that Mac and Linux systems were not affected, but CrowdStrike is available on Linux and has caused smaller scale outages before on those Linux machines. Some are calling this the biggest IT outage in history. What do you think?
Yeah, this was absolutely crazy. This video is probably going to be out a little later, so all of it will pretty much blow by. We're always a little bit late on stuff in that respect, but yeah, I mean, we both have a particular friend who was working all weekend fixing it. He was really unhappy about that, and yeah, it made a lot of noise. Did you have any direct effects or indirect effects from it, or that you know of? Like,
I didn't notice anything. All of my systems are Linux, and none of them run CrowdStrike. So, for two reasons, they wouldn't have affected me. But I was trying to think if I noticed anything being down. I remember hearing that things were down, but I think most of the services that I use are like not Windows powered. So. Okay. If anything that I used was affected, I didn't notice it. Okay,
I didn't. I guess nothing directly affected me because I don't have CrowdStrike on any of my computers. I do use some Windows systems, but not everything. However, when this was all going on, I don't remember exactly what day. I had to talk to my CPA, and we were working stuff out. They're having some problems with the IRS. Good news is it's a lot better now, but we won't get into that in particular. But while I was talking to her, she was doing some recalculations on stuff based on like some answers that I gave her, trying to figure some stuff out. and it was going really slow. And she's like, I don't know what's going on today, but everything's so slow. And so I told her about the whole CrowdStrike thing. And she's like, maybe like she doesn't have it, but she's using systems that are running somewhere else, right? These other servers that are doing it. So I think that might have been the only thing that was a direct effect. I didn't, I don't go to Starbucks. I don't use their mobile app or anything like that.
You know what? Something you just said made me remember. I was affected by it because my wife and I just bought an electric car, and we went to the DMV to do the registration, and they turned us away because all of their systems were down.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That sucks.
They couldn't do anything.
Wow. Did you have to go to the DMV, or did you were able to do stuff online? You just got a new car.
There was some stuff we could do online, but we did have to go to the DMV to do the registration. I think I'm not sure exactly. We may have been going for no reason, but I don't know. It's hard and convoluted, so I just wanted to talk to a human being.
Fair enough. But that reminds me that I also had another problem. I had a problem with my car, and it just completely shut down and wouldn't connect. But that had nothing to do with this. I thought it might. It was the exact same time, but it had nothing to do with this. The 12-volt battery died, and that seemed to be the only problem.
Okay. I'm glad to know that your car doesn't run Windows. Yeah.
Or connect to a Windows system, because that could have been the other issue. But no, it was not that at all. So no, I didn't really have any direct effects, but I did have some problems with it. And I hope everybody who had to deal with it over the weekend is catching up on sleep.
Yeah, I noticed that Microsoft stock actually took a little bit of a tumble that day. But I think it's because people assumed that it was a Microsoft problem, but it's actually not. Microsoft had nothing to do with it. So CrowdStrike's software runs at the kernel level. So it has kernel level permissions, which is essentially the highest level of permissions that software can have. And it also uses, I forget the name of the system, but there's basically a system in Windows that you can tell Windows that this software that you're writing has to be running before Windows can successfully boot. So CrowdStrike was using that system. So basically, once CrowdStrike stopped booting correctly, Windows would say, okay, well, you told me that I couldn't boot unless you were running, and you're not running, so blue screen of death it is. Yeah,
I get that, but it sounds kind of crazy. But yeah, I understand. It's I didn't read anything or find anything about how exactly this change got pushed into production, this problem. Usually, I would expect a big company, it's being used everywhere, so I assume it's a big company, would have a lot of controls over this sort of thing. And what would usually catch this, if nothing else caught it, is a continuous deployment system where every day, at least, some places do it more often. Everything's built and deployed to some test machine.
I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that they had something like that, and that this problem only occurs if you have just their Falcon sensor software installed. If you have another software that they provide installed, you won't run into this issue. And that was what they were testing, was the Falcon sensor along with this other software. So that's why their automated testing didn't catch it, even though most of their customers don't have that other system, that other software. They only have the Falcon sensor software.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of slipped past their automated testing. Although, really, this should have been caught in a number of ways. I don't know why they're pushing updates to 100% of their users right away. Normally, if you're talking about a big deployment where you're deploying to millions of machines across the world, you would do some sort of canary group where you have a small subset of users, 1% of your users, that receive the update first. And only when you notice that went well, that all of those machines report back that, yes, we're running this version of the software, the updated version, and everything is working. Only once that happens would you push it to a larger group and then eventually all of your users.
Yeah. And when you have like millions of users, oftentimes you don't even start with 1%. It's like 0.1% or something, because you're still going to get thousands of machines that way. And then it's like you do like 0.1% and then 1%, and then maybe 10% and then 100%. That's one way of doing it. It's not necessarily how you do it, but yeah, that would catch it. And if you had like 1% failure rate, then that's, not great, but you didn't crash the whole world, right?
Yeah. Right. Like there were systems that were like definitely like mission critical systems that this crashed. Yeah. And that's really not good. It really shows that, like, I don't know, to me, it seems like CrowdStrike does not do enough to prevent this sort of problem. I mean, clearly, because it happened.
Right.
So, I think that CrowdStrike has got to look at their processes and maybe reevaluate a lot of what they're doing to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Yeah. And unfortunately, like, Microsoft can't really do anything about this to prevent something like that, because sometimes software does need this level of control of your system, and when it has that level of control, it can break your system. This same sort of thing could happen to Linux, and it could happen to Mac. Like, this isn't a design flaw of Windows. This is just an unfortunate circumstance that happened to Windows. So yeah, Microsoft can't really do anything to prevent this in the future. It's all on CrowdStrike here. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is CrowdStrike a public company, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. I was wondering how their stock price went. I mean, if it's hitting Microsoft, it's got to be killing them.
I'm sure, a lot of their customers might be reevaluating their contracts.
Yeah. Does not uphold trust in your company.
Yeah, this is something that they're probably going to take a real big hit on. And I don't even know if I could say it's undeserved. I mean, this was something that was preventable that they let slip through. This could have been prevented by a number of standard practices in the industry that they weren't following. Thank you for tuning in. This has been How the Tech Are You? We do this show every week, and we release them in segments on YouTube. You can also find the show in podcast form and all of our other shows at echoplexmedia.com. If you want to support us, you can do that at eplex.store or patreon.com/echoplex. Another video will be up on the screen right around here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great Tech-in week.